The fact that life presents obstacles is omnipresent, especially as we age. At times, this prevents us from accessing the things we need to do to be well. This movie highlights 3 stories of people who are victorious in their quest to maintain contact with the earth. The glory of gardening. Hands in the dirt, head in the sun, heart with nature. To nurture a garden is to feed not just the body, but the soul. Alfred Austin.
Yeah, so they're looking very nice.
My mom, she just loved working in the garden. She wasn't a well woman, but she still loved it. We started growing sweet peas and things like that. And it was just to keep us busy, I think. And that sort of stayed with me.
My grandfather was a miner, so he came here to work in the mines in Nanaimo. And he lived in Harewood on one of the 5 acres set aside for the miners to live and grow food. So for this first 6 years of my life, I lived in Harewood with my grandparents because my mother had TB. I learned about weeding. That was one of my first jobs. Even though I was just a little child, I learned how to weed when I was very, very young. And I learned why you have to weed things.
I guess I was about 3 when that picture was taken. Dad and my older brothers were haying at the time and transferring a rack of hay onto a stack.
When I was a little girl, my father had a 1-acre garden that he would grow the vegetables for the family. People brought along their friends, and their friends participated too, and we would have corn roast, and it was something that's given me roots for my whole life in terms of being connected to the soil and the pleasures of having real good produce.
I loved gardening, and now, like, I was fairly busy when I lived in Qualicum Beach, and when I came here, like, what do you do? You know. So I started, and it just turned into that. And I enjoyed every morning I get up and go out there and play with it. I can't work for too long. Like, I work maybe half an hour to an hour at the very most at a time.
I've had gardens wherever I've lived. I've lived in apartments. I've lived in townhouse situations. I didn't really have very much room because there wasn't that much room. But I always had something that I could watch the growth of it, the growth of anything, because I like to watch it and then produce it into paintings.
Yeah, we were happy to leave winter behind. Yeah. Gardening in Winnipeg is a totally different experience for us than gardening in Nanaimo, mainly because the soils in Winnipeg were so different than the soils here. The soils there were clay-based, very rich. Here they were sandy and rocky, and so for us it was a whole learning curve as to how and what to plant.
There,
And we're still doing it.
yeah, there you could stick anything in the ground and it came up. You know, it just,
Yeah.
The only difference between stumbling blocks and stepping stones is the way in which we use them. Have you found any aspects of your garden to be challenging?
What's challenging, dear?
well, lots of rock.
The dogs like to get into the beds and eat everything, so there was no stopping them, so I decided that we had to do something quite elevated. And even with it really elevated, the dogs managed to get in.
You don't deserve this, you know.
See the bean pole there? Well, I planted those 4 or 5 times. As soon as they got through the ground, the rabbit would grab them. And he comes back and forth. Sometimes you don't see him for a day. And I put snap peas in there. He just ate them. I raised this little green box behind there, about this big, and I put them in there just to try it. They haven't been touched because you can't get in.
Watching the different flowers, you know, that really has helped my mental health issues. It's a natural prescription. I also use my art. If I'm not doing artwork, I can launch into a depression very, very quickly.
I'm 95 and I get out most mornings and quite often in the afternoon. These are bought Mexican tomatoes with a slice cut out of them and put in a little pot about 1/2 inch in the ground. And these ones here and there have all grown from that one little tiny Mexican tomato. It's good exercise because a lot of the things you have to bend over for. And as you get older, it's harder to dig and whatnot, but you can adjust what you have in the garden without having to do too much heavy work.
When I'm away and I think about the garden, I miss the meditative aspects of a garden. And what I find is that even though I might complain about deadheading rhodos or picking the dead lilies off the daylilies, it's actually a meditative process. So when I'm out there snapping them, it sort of takes me to another place. It's quite lovely. I enjoy that.
I get help from my neighbors in maintaining my garden. My neighbor that lives beside me is very, very helpful in watering. I find the watering, the hose itself is quite heavy to have to move it back and forth. The trellises were built by a friend that I have who's also a very avid gardener who lives up in Qualicum Beach area. And so he built them for me and wouldn't take any money for them because he's an avid gardener himself.
It's a really favorite time when you get to pick your produce.
Picking raspberries right now.
So that's something to look forward to. And the dogs look forward to the peas and the tomatoes, which I wish I had more of this year, but I got bigger ones this year. Yeah, so I think that it's seasonal, what I look forward to. And then, of course, there'll be, in November, there'll be the kiwi. And then at Christmas time, we have the holly to pick for decorations. So it's a seasonal experience.
I feel that this new program that they've instituted here at Selby Place, allowing people to grow their own vegetables, is a very, very good initiative. For people, I've watched people go down each week to see oh, I've got a tomato or I've got a zucchini that's ripened, you know, and I see the joy. And that's what I like to see, because other people are being able to enjoy growing their own stuff.
Doing a little work in a garden makes you think more about how lucky we are to be able to do this. If I was just living downtown without a garden, I don't think I'd be the same. I can walk without a cane, but I don't like falling over. Good.